Today we're going to take a look at the 2018 version of Aurora HDR by Macphun. Hi, my name is William Beem. I'm a photographer based in Central Florida, and I've been doing HDR for almost a decade now, and this is currently my favorite program to use. I've gone through a number of others, but this one just makes it quick, simple, and easy. That way I can go out, take my photos, and not have to worry about how much time I would spend post-processing to put them together. It used to take me 45 minutes to an hour to put together an image, just the way I liked it. Now with Aurora HDR, honestly, I can do this in just a few minutes and with a few simple clicks. Let me give you an example of what's inside and why I think you're going to like it. We're going to start off with the sample image that's built into Aurora. So if you get this product, you'll get these same images. We'll take a quick look here. And you can see you've got your brackets. If you take a look down here at the interface, you've got alignment in case you didn't shoot this on a tripod. If it was handheld or you're worried about if things aren't going to align, this will just go ahead and line everything up for you. And then, of course, you've got some ghost reduction and chromatic aberration. We don't need any of that for the built-in shot. Let's go ahead and create the HDR. It takes a moment to put this together. I am using a 5K iMac with about 24 gigs of RAM. I almost forgot what I've got. And as you can tell, it happened pretty quickly. So what you're looking at right now is just the initial HDR that it builds. If you come up here and look at this little eyeball, this will show you your zero exposure or your center of your frame. And if you just took one shot, that's what you get. And automatically by blending them, you get, quite a bit more. You can see this. The sun is a bit more dramatic. There's more exposure here in the hill. Again, if I go back and take a look at this, you can see how it's pretty dark there in the shadows. So what can we do? Typically, if you're going to work with HDR, you'll move a lot of these sliders, highlights, shadows, whites and blacks. There's actually a simpler way to do it with Aurora. Go over here to this one called Smart Tone and just pull this up a little bit. And you can see that automatically it opens up the shadows. It just gives you a bit more of a flatter image to work with. And then that way you can go ahead and build it the way you want. The next thing you're going to do is look at the slider above it called HDR Enhancer. I'm just going to put this right in the middle. And again, you can see we've just made some quick changes just like that. If you double click the label next to the slider, it'll undo it, set it back to its default. So it's a quick way to see one slider on and off. Another thing you can do is take a look at the eyeball over here. This is for just the panel that you're in. So right now we're in HDR Basic. If I click this eyeball, it'll take it right back to as if that whole panel weren't on. But if we had other settings down here, those would remain on. So you can see panel by panel what changes you've made. And of course, this little icon right next to it is just to undo everything. All right, so two sliders, and we've made some pretty dramatic changes. I'm going to do a little bit more. I love my contrast, so I'm going to go ahead and add that back in. One of the things that is kind of concerning me with this is the shrubbery around here is a little bit too electric green for my taste. I'm going to pull that back a bit after we add some vibrance and just make it a little bit worse, because I like what it's doing with some of the other colors, but it's just a little too much for me right here. To do that, I'm going to come all the way down here to the HSL, which is your hue, saturation, and luminance slider. And I'm just going to pull on the luminance, I'm going to pull the greens down just a little bit. And to me, that looks a bit more natural than what we had before. So using that same thing, we're in the HSL slider. If I turn this little eyeball on and off, there's without it, it's very green. And to me, that's just a bit better of what the vegetation should look like. One of my favorite things built into Aurora is this top and bottom lighting. And this little button right over here will set your orientation. By default, it's kind of right in the middle. I'm going to move this up just a little bit so the center of it is on the horizon line. And then let's see what we can do. We're on the top right here. I'm going to turn that button off, and I'm going to warm things up. I'm going to drag the exposure down just a little bit and try and bring that sunset out a little bit more and maybe add a little bit of vibrance. Now suddenly, let's go back and take a look off and on. You can see how it just added some drama to the sky. Let's go to the bottom. And if we want, we can bring the exposure up. I don't think we really need that, but I do want to add some more vibrance and maybe a little bit more warmth. And overall, that just kind of sets the scene for what I'm literally looking for. There's a ton of other things in here that we haven't looked at on this image. I don't think we need them. This one called Image Radiance adds a little bit of a glow, which you've got two tools here. There's one here called glow. Let's go ahead and take a look at that. And you can see how that really softens up the sky. I'm not really a fan of that one. Image radiance, I think, when used subtly or used with a brush, kind of changes things up. You can see once again it's softening it. One of the things you might notice is the fact that you can add layers over here. So we've got a plus and minus to add and delete layers. I'm going to hit the plus key, and you've got a choice. You can add another adjustment layer, or you can add a new image layer. Now, all the adjustments I made are in these panels, and every one of them are on the same layer. So if I decided that I masked something in or out and it didn't work, then I'm going to be brushing in or out all of the things that I made the changes. So if you want to do selective, you might want to create a new layer, add your adjustment layer, and then brush it in or out. In this case, though, I want to do something different. I want to add a new image layer. And the reason is I really want to warm this image up just a bit more. So I'm going to select this little texture. This is actually something I bought from Trey Ratcliffe several years ago. I don't know if he still sells his textures or not. I hope so. But this is just something I'm going to use for the color, not so much for the texture. So let me open this up. And you're going to see it just completely replace this image. And that is just too much. So what we're going to do is come over here to the layers and change it from normal. And I'm going to start off with soft light. That's usually what works for me. And you can see how it's just really put a gold cast all over that. It's a bit more than what I want. I'm going to bring this down roughly to about 70%. More or less. And now I kind of like it. I like the glow that sunset puts. For some reason, though, I don't really care for it right here on this hill. I hit the letter B, and that had my brush brought up. One of the things I want to show you is up here at the top, you'll see where it says paint or erase. And if you're used to using either black or white for your mask, you can see the same thing. We have black over here. In this case, I want to erase the texture from this. So I'm going to be using that to paint on the mask, really. So as you can see, as I go over here, the greens are coming back. The gray of the mountain is coming back, or hill, whatever you want to call it. And I think I'm going to come down here and just get this lower part and just kind of bring all the colors back that were there. And I'm going to leave the warmth from that texture everywhere else. And that is it. Very quickly, and probably could have done this much faster, when you're not describing this as you go along. But you've got plenty of controls over there. You don't need to use every one of them. And you can make some very quick and radical changes. Just to remind you, here is the I button again. This is the center frame that we started off with. It looks kind of dull and lifeless. And within a few click slides and one texture, we've got something that looks like this. Okay, let me go ahead and try this with one of my own images. These frames are from the conservatory at the Bellagio in Las Vegas. And I had a tripod, so I'm not going to really worry about alignment, but there are people moving around, so I am going to put on ghost reduction. And I'm just going to leave this at the default and see how it goes. All right, as you can see, this is the image that you're going to get after the merge of those three frames. I'm going to hit the eyeball. It's actually kind of dark inside, so if you're exposing for the sky or something particular like that, you're going to have a lot of detail lost in the shadows. But the merge from all the frames came together quite nicely, so I've got exposure everywhere I want. But what's really impressive to me is look at these people moving. As far as you would expect a lot of ghosting with this smoke in the air, with the people moving back around. And honestly, that's pretty good. It does a wonderful job of really choosing which elements to bring in from each of the frames to make sure that you don't have ghosting going through your photographs. All right, I'm going to do the same thing to kind of get this one going. I'm going to start off with the Smart Tone and HDR Enhance. I'm going to add a little bit of contrast. And let's take a quick look again. I'm going to turn on and off this little eyeball over here for this frame. That way you can see where we came from after the HDR merge, and then there are the changes I just put in. I mean, that's really nice. I mean, I only hit a few sliders there, and suddenly everything's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and I think I want to add a little bit of image radiance to this one. And I'm going to bring up the shadows because when you add image radiance, it seems to create a bit more shadows. So let's go right about there. Kind of bring that out again. So that gives it a little bit of a softness to it. And let's see how our top and bottom lighting can change. I'm going to add a little bit more exposure or maybe take it away. No, I think I want to do a little bit more. It's a bright sunny day outside. You want to see that reflected inside. And it's a cool sky, but when I come down here at the bottom, since the sun's shining in, I want to add a bit of warmth. And maybe just a bit of contrast. And there's a lot of other changes that I could make. I don't really need to. There are a couple of other features in here that might be interesting. They've added some lens correction. So if you look over here at the top, you'll see next to the filters, there's two icons. This one, bring in lens correction. So if you've got a little bit of distortion, you can see it kind of go where it's bowing in or out. You can do some corrections for that. The one that I kind of like to look for is the D-vignette. Whether you realize it or not, you notice over here it's a little bit darker, and usually photographers like to add a vignette. But if in case you just want to bring it away, you've got a little tool over here to help you out with that. And the next one is the transform tool. So if you're not quite where you want to be, so maybe it's not level, maybe it's you're facing a wall that's kind of at an angle rather than direct on, you want to make some changes to it, you've got some tools here to help. So if vertically, we'll show you how you can move that kind of backward and forward. And we'll do the same thing with horizontal. I'm not going to worry about it for this particular image. And then, of course, the crop tool is really kind of handy. I would like to tilt this just a little bit because I think that line over here wasn't quite what I want. And also, I usually like to go with a 16:9 crop. So let me bring this down. You can see there's a number of types of crops over here, including like, if you want something for your Facebook cover or feed. And there's just a number of useful crops. I'm going to go with my 16:9 crop and bring it right there and hit crop. And that's my image. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this look at Aurora HDR. The retail cost on this, I think, is $59 if you already have a previous version and you want to upgrade, $99 retail. I can help you out of it with that. I have a coupon code, and it's just like my last name, Beem, and that'll be showing on screen. So if you want to save $10 either as an upgrade or as a new purchase, just use the coupon code Beem and save $10 off of Aurora HDR. It'll also save you $10 off of Macphun Luminar, and it's a 10% discount on their other products. Hope you enjoyed this. Please leave me some feedback and comments. I'm going to come back later on and do some individual videos about some of the tools in here to give you a bit more of an idea of what you can do with the product. I really do love Aurora HDR. As I said, and as you've seen here, it just really makes short work of post-processing your HDR photos, and it's something I love very much. I hope I can help you understand it and use it on your own images. Thank you.